So, welcome everybody. Great to get this panel going. We had a quick video to kick us off. I mean, the idea we want to talk about is decarbonization is accelerating, and at the same time it becomes clearer than ever that this is nothing anyone can do on their own. Collaboration is needed along the value chain. Collaboration is also needed between regions. No one is better positioned to talk about that intra-regional collaboration like Hydro, with operations here in Brazil, in Pará, but also in Norway and in other parts of the world. And we want to spend the panel here today and have a little discussion around how that happens in practice in the aluminum industry. What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? And what are learnings that also would apply to other sectors. We have a great combination here. I would ask all of you to briefly introduce ourselves. Before we do that, my name is Cornelius Piper. I'm a senior partner with BCG. I work a lot at the intersection of climate and industrial decarbonization. So the questions that we have here on the agenda are a lot of what I'm spending my time with. It's great to be here with all of you. Hanna, maybe you can do a quick intro for yourself.
Yeah, my name is Hanna Simonsen. I'm heading aluminium metal in Norsk Hydro, which is then the global smelter portfolio we have. In Norway, as you mentioned, in Brazil, we also have joint ventures in Canada, in Qatar, and other places. And we also have recyclers in the US, in Europe, which is taking the aluminium back in the loop.
Great. Janina?
Hi, hello. Well, I am currently the executive president of the Brazilian Aluminum Association. We've been in Brazil since 1970, so now we are completing 55 years old institute, and we gather industries that operate in the whole value chain, from the mining, refiners, the smelters, the transformer products, and the end consumers, and in recycling. So I think that we do have a good representation of the value chain, and I think that one of the greatest things about Brazil in terms of competitive advantage is the fact that we do have integrated and verticalized industry.
Thank you. Edu?
Hi, so I'm Eduardo Figueiredo. I'm head of sustainability for bauxite and alumina in Norsk Hydro. So we have an operation in Brazil, a bauxite mine, in a pipeline that takes the bauxite to Alunorte, across the river here. And then we supply to Hanna with fantastic alumina to make the aluminum.
Great, that's a good segue, and I mean, aluminum is a fantastic material that is actually critical for the energy transition in so many ways, and at the same time it also has a pretty big footprint, carbon, but also beyond that, in the mining, in the processing. The primary is very energy intensive. It has great recyclability, which is obviously a fantastic quality, and maybe to get us started, Hanna, what is, in a way, Hydro's ambition on the broader sustainability front, both in terms of what you can contribute with this material, this very versatile material, but also to address the footprint?
Yeah, starting point is that we see ourselves as a leading supplier of low carbon and recycled metal. And as you said, aluminium is part of the solution in a way. It's an important part when you want to succeed with a green transition. And still, when you look at the global emissions from aluminium, it's pretty high. We talk about 20 or close to 20 kilos per then produced aluminium. On our side, we have a much lower footprint, mainly because we have aluminium production based on renewable hydropower in Norway and other places, Canada, and also in Brazil. So that's very good. Here in Brazil, you have renewables. So that means that we have a starting point, which is a footprint, which is only 1/4 of the global average. But still, we have put up targets on decarbonization. I'll come back to the rest. Decarbonization, which means that we will take down the footprint by another 30% towards 2030 compared to 2018. And then we have a net zero target in 2050. That's going to be challenging, but we have a roadmap and we have plans for that. And at the same time, as you also asked, we also see that our role is beyond carbon. We think that green and a just transition needs to go hand in hand. And that means people, it means nature, it means being a good neighbor where we operate. And I think that's what we can discuss now. What does it mean?
Yeah. Maybe, Edu, question for you. You are from Brazil, you live in Oslo, so you essentially embody this, global value chain that hydro covers, from upstream to the extrusion piece. How does, the operation in Brazil, what hydro does in Brazil and what hydro does in Norway and other places in the world fit together and also help each other in advancing those goals that Hanne was speaking about?
Yeah. So, first, I think we have a unique position because we go from the mine to the primary metal and to extrusion. So we connect the upstream of the aluminum to the client, right? So we can deliver a traceability across this, and then we see more and more the importance. And then what we also see is carbon is, 10 years now from Paris. I think we've come a long way. There's still a long way to go, but we have to see the advances. And I think the market is in part responsible for those advances, right? The market mechanisms and so on. So, and now we see more and more pressure on beyond carbon, which is the theme for this. And this is where we look at where we mine in the world. And for the bauxite parts, we have basically Brazil, but Guinea, Australia, Jamaica. So everywhere you look, you have challenges. And then in human rights, biodiversity, and so on. So that is, how do we look at this in our value chain, in our company? And what we see is Brazil is actually a sweet spot because there are immense challenges here. And we all can see this. COP in Belém is giving, I think, the world a glimpse of how challenging it is. But also, it's a very safe jurisdiction. It's a democracy. We have the rules, we have the regulations, so we can operate here, make a difference, and operate with a license, according to all the rules. So that gives us the capacity to go to the clients and say, okay, this is an aluminum that's not only low carbon, but it's also responsible mining, responsible refinery, and so on. And that can be a competitive edge for us.
And Janina, what is your perspective from, an industry association? You said you work with the entire value chain, and also how can the role that you play here in Brazil, connecting in a way all the market participants in the industry, help to learn from each other and advance the agenda? What are you doing there?
So one of the missions of ABAL is to first to promote aluminium as a strategic material and all its benefits it brings, not only for our consumer markets, but also to understand, especially in a context of decarbonization, how we can contribute to the global efforts in order to transition to a low carbon emissions. But we also understand that when we talk about low carbon, we are not only talking about emission. There is a lot of things going on, and as Eduardo said, is not only being efficient in a way that we can reduce the impact of our operation, but also being responsible in how we do it, the metrics that it's used, the kind of standards, and the fact that we have companies that not only work here in Brazil, but they are operating in different jurisdictions. I think this is very beneficial because we can raise the bar in terms of the best practices. And one of the other aspects of the mission of ABAL is to build a bridge with different stakeholders, not only industries that sometimes are competitors, but that there are also within the whole value chain, but also with stakeholders, with civil society, with government, trying to build solutions that work within the reality that we operate. So it's a little bit of our work. We also we do have a lot of efforts related to building the capacity within the industry. We do have a lot of education process in order, we try to raise the bar. And the fact that we do have companies operating it globally, we can bring the best of it, and we can also raise the bar within terms of regulation. So we've been present in many forums within the national government. We are in the Low Carbon Committee. We are in the National Circularity Forum. We are present in many initiatives that join efforts and have representatives not only from the industry, but government, civil society, NGOs, making sure that we are a voice, but we also hear and understand what are the claims, and also try to bring it to the industry where we can share the responsibilities.
Great. You want to add something, Hannah?
I was just thinking, just to follow up, we're just thinking that on our vision in a way is to make a positive contribution where we operate. And why do we do that? You could ask us. Because as a company, you need also to earn money. It needs to be a profitability aspect. But why do we do that? First is, of course, to be compliant. It's about OECD guidelines. This is kind of the first point. But we want to do something more than that. And there are some reasons for that. One is that by actually being a positive contribution where you operate, it makes the business more robust. And I think, Eduardo, you could talk more about that for Brazil. But it's something about making sure that we have robustness in our operations. So it's a kind of stable operation. But secondly, it's also about, with all what you said now about traceability, it's an increasing interest and demand that we are open to our customers, to other stakeholders, of how we operate. How do we engage? And thirdly, it's also about engaging our employees. Employees want to work for a responsible employer, and we see that growing more and more. So I think we need to be better in telling about this, what we actually do, to be engaging people, but also to be more traceable on what we do. Not only to tell the success stories, but also to talk about the dilemmas.
But I mean, I think that's very important and a great point to emphasize. And at the same time, I think many of the things called raising the bar, they don't come for free. And there is, in a way, a question of how do you make that work economically and financially. So beyond the aspects of, talent, local recognition, etc., are you seeing customers willing to pay for these efforts? And is there a business case, so to say, to make some of those important and necessary steps happen?
I think, first of all, it's something about the expectations to a company like us. It doesn't necessarily come with a price tag, but it comes with a license to operate. It comes in a value of being a preferred provider. It comes with the expectations from stakeholders, policymakers, customers, financial markets. So there are all these expectations around a company like Hydro, which we need to take seriously. And I think that's, in a way, a business case in itself, because you need to do a risk assessment of what you're doing. And the risk assessment cannot only about being a risk assessment internally, it's a risk assessment of the environment where you operate. So with that, I think there might be opportunities going forward to make more out of being the preferred provider. And Eduardo and I, we've been discussing that being open about what we're doing, how do we engage, and also some dilemmas. I think it could be a business case by having more companies engaging with us.
I sometimes also think about this, it's not always easy to find that green premium that everybody talks about. I think increasingly, there might also be a chance for something like a gray discount emerge that, if you don't do many of these things, and you spoke about license to operate, but also more broadly, it might get harder to be listed, etc. That still, I think, leaves open a little bit the question how to finance some of these really big investments. And that's probably a panel in itself to talk about that. But there's always two sides to that coin, and what happens if you don't do that? And my perspective actually is that what we're seeing, although it moves very slowly, a few years ago there was a lot of uncertainty and also certain risk involved with moving early and taking steps. But slowly and gradually, but steadily, this balance is shifting a little bit, and you get to a point where the risk of not doing anything goes up step by step, and it's more and more safe to assume that these will be the future requirements. So you better wrap your arms around it. Eduardo, maybe a question to you. We kind of touched upon this a little bit here and there. Obviously, a lot of the discussion is around decarbonization and carbon footprint, etc., which also has the benefit of being relatively, it's all relative, but still easy to measure because it has a unit, and it's CO2 per tons of CO2 per tons of product, whatever. What is, in your view, in Hydro's view, in a way, the next frontier, on the sustainability agenda, and also how is that tangible and how do you make it measurable? Maybe specifically here in Brazil and Pará, where you have big operations, but also broader.
Well, I think that's the $1 million question, right? But I'll connect that to the discussion here is we look at the whole beyond carbon, as much as the carbon, as really our social license to operate. And this is, for us, is very clear. If we don't have that, it's not the license itself, is we're going to be prevented from working a mine in Brazil, in the Amazon. We operate in the Amazon, right? So what we do is we calculate this. We've been running this exercise to see what does it mean, social license to operate, because it can be an abstract concept, right? So we're identifying the building blocks of what the social license to operate, in understanding what does that mean, in not only in terms of cost, but in terms of what's the strategy behind the social license to operate, because we have to ensure that we have it with the communities, with the government and everything, but also, is there anything beyond that? So the example is we have a 240 kilometer pipeline between Paragominas and Alunorte with 28 quilombola communities and in our buffer for consultation, with whom we have a constant consultation process. So we do have a significant investment in mandatory and voluntary to make sure that we have a trustful relationship and we're sharing values with them. So what we see is, okay, that's important for a social license to operate, but obviously we have a finite budget. We cannot pay for the entire transformation on a very complex region. But the fact that we're doing this is also interesting for other sectors. So the chocolate sector and the palm oil, the cosmetics, they're interested because there is good cocoa production, very, very good. And it's $9,000 a kilo of cocoa now, right? So it's way, way up. And what we're doing, what we saw is, okay, we are attacking the gap between a low condition to the proper condition to deliver the products to this kind of company. And that has a value because it cuts the cost of the implementation of the project. So we're trying to see then not only along the value chain, but also around where we work to see how can we scale up our positive impact by bringing partners in and actually promoting a social license to operate. So we've been doing this, and then we looked into our value chain and say, this might be interesting to the high-end customers at the end of the line. And then we said, okay, do you want to join forces with me? Because you are, as a matter of fact, insetting into the value chain where the materiality is and returning the value so that we can expand the positive, and then you can use that in your sustainability strategy. So we've been looking into ways not to make the financial business case only, but you make the business case for a company like Hydro that say, okay, we want to be part of shaping a future, not only low carbon, but a social just future. So we need to be first movers. But the way I understand it is we need regulations to make everybody follow, the first movers. And then country by country is extremely difficult in that way. So going back to measuring, the traceability is extremely important, but traceability, they measure how you do it and if you're complying with the regulations, not what's the impact of what you're doing to the overall region. And this is where we are investing time and energy to try to figure out, to say, how can we actually measure the impact, the positive impact, to make sure also that we can communicate to the market, but also to the communities. It's better to have us here than to not have in some cases. So this is kind of the proof point for us.
Janina, perspectives on that, or Hannah?
Well, I think that it's, I'll try to connect to the question you make, Johanna, about the value if the customers are willing to pay, because it's kind of the question is what comes first? Is it the chicken or the egg? But the aluminum industry have been doing this for a long time, regardless of the discussions about decarbonization, the emissions. We've been doing this either because otherwise we wouldn't have the social license to operate, but the fact that it's an industry that is highly committed to safety, health, employing, having people engaged. Otherwise, especially in a country and in a context where people are engaged, they need to believe in what they are working, and the same way they also need to believe that we are the best neighbors, the best partners. Yeah, it's the kind of thing that is comparable. We've been seeing this discussion about green premium, and we have seen that at some markets, the aluminum has been market with some sort of a green premium. And the fact is, we need to have a harmonized metric. Yes, we can trace, we can have certification, and we have a lot of initiatives, the aluminum stewardship initiatives. We have, for instance, the Brazilian government is trying to work on several projects like the what they call green stamp, selo verde. We want to make sure that the trade system is not only a patchwork of systems. We need to have a systemic, it needs to be isonomic, it needs to be equitable. So in a sense, yes, we need to work hard to understand what are the metrics and try to harmonize it. When we think, we just did an inventory of emissions, which we presented yesterday, which bring us some sort of comparisons where we stand in terms of emissions, what are the technological routes that we have, what are the paths we have ahead. And there is a lot of common challenges within different jurisdictions. So we're talking about electrifying the productions, we're talking about substitution of fossil fuels in refineries, where we can use other sources of fuels. In the case of Brazil, also how to promote circularity. It is a route, it's a fast route. But there are specific challenges to each country, and also it's not a solution that fits all. So we need to take these into consideration. We need to take into consideration the locations where we operate, the kind of the social, environmental, and economic complex that we live. Like in Brazil, we don't have only the challenge of having the social license to operate, especially when you are operating in a very complex ecosystems like the Amazon, where there is a lot of expectations, where sometimes where the state is not there, the expectations normally shift to the companies who are there. And we are talking about shared responsibility. we do have the companies, they understand that they have a responsibility in also supporting the development of the territories and the communities where they are, but it's not a responsibility that is shared only by them. So it's really complex. It needs to take these into considerations, and the solutions that we have applied for all of them.
Anything from you, or you want to?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit back to the social, so CSR budgets. I think most corporates have a CSR budget. I think what we are discussing here, and I hope we can discuss even more, is how do we make smart investments?
Yes.
What is smart investments? Because we had in the past, we had a lot of these local budgets, and it was a lot of different items, you could say. It was a local tennis club, it was a local football club, it was a lot of nice, good initiatives. But smart investments means that you need to think through, what do we really want to achieve? What is the impact we want to achieve in this context? And the context is very different from the Amazon to the west coast in Norway to a little village in the US. It's a very different context. So what we have done over the last year is to have what we call a Just Transition program, where we engage the employees as well to come with ideas. And I was amazed last year when I received all the applicants. It was double the much that I thought, and it was coming from all around the world, with employees coming with a suggestion for how we could engage in a local society. So I had a hard time to find the few that we were then, we actually added a little bit because it was so many good ideas, where we actually gave funding. But I think the example here in Brazil is more than engaging the employees, is engaging the whole society, all the different stakeholders, and by that engage the people and make them also responsible for guide and prioritize. Because it's also about not only engaging the people in an investment in itself, but really to think through, how could you make an impact? So what does it mean when you do the things in the Amazon, for example, when it comes to engaging in other kind of industries? It's not about the aluminium industry, it's local small industries which is coming on the fringe or our industry. I think that's extremely interesting.
Yeah, these are great points, and what you said before about the collaboration that you have here with cocoa growers. I think it's fascinating in the sense that, yes, it's also about collaboration, but not in the industry, not in the value chain, but like across many fences, if you will. And at the same time, while you could say it's easier to measure success on the carbon side, what I think is so powerful, and I think you alluded a little bit to it, Hannah, on the kind of social impact and social responsibility side, it's that the impact is so tangible and measurable, whereas an emission reduction, no one can see it, no one has the immediate impact anytime soon, etc., etc. And that's in a way the power of those types of investments, especially when they are coordinated and not like fragmented, that you can really, really make a difference in a few years, and everybody can see it, which is obviously also very inspiring. So against that backdrop, I guess question to all of you, there's always, a lot of ambition, and at the same time, things are moving slower than we would like them to be, etc., etc. If we take a time horizon that is not too far away, 3 years, 2020, beginning of 2029, end of 2028, what would good look like from your perspective along, some of the dimensions we talked about here in Pará, or anywhere else, and what Hydro is doing, or for the aluminum industry in Brazil? What is a win? And what would make you kind of feel like this is a success? Want to start?
I can start. Obviously, from a more of a corporate perspective, it's we have set up a strategy. So we have, for 2030, we want to train, educate as much as 500,000 people in the societies where we operate. So that's a tangible target, and we're trying to measure success. So in 3 years, we should be very close to that. And we have other targets as well. So something you could measure. But I think in addition to this kind of more mathematical measurements, which we try to follow, I think also this Just Transition program, I hope to see that the engagement has in a way continued and been also maybe then enlarged a little bit, so also to engage the local societies where we operate. I will give just one example, since it's talk about Brazil, but also from Norway, I mentioned in the previous panel, is that we had this fish farming up in the north of Norway, where we now have engaged the local society to take the fish waste, produce biogas, which we then take back into the cast house for producing aluminium. And that's a way where you have a win-win-win. We get lower carbon, it's quite competitive, and you engage local people in a new kind of business line. So I think it's a little bit the same as you mentioned on this project.
As they get rid of their waste, right?
Yeah. So if we could, I don't know whether it's possible to measure those kind of success, but I think at least we should talk much more about it. Because my ideal hope is that not only do we reach our targets, but that we also see that our customers, the stakeholders, come to us because we are taking a leading position and where they want to join us.
Right. Janaina, what does good look like?
Okay, I would like by addressing a concern and then how we think we could move forward. I believe that addressing the elephant in the room is that we are living in a very fragmented world. And this fragmentation, it brings a lot of uncertainty. Yep. And in order for us to address that, in a moment where everybody's trying to figure out how we're going to move, and sometimes we see countries or even companies having to decide, does it worth to continue in this path of investment in social, environmental responsibility? I believe that companies, they are willing to continue in this path, the same way as government is trying to understand and also make sure that those commitments, there is not a decline in the kind of commitments, and they will be doing this through regulation. And the key point here is how we are going to be able to advance in traceability, and because traceability is what brings governance and transparency to the table. This is what makes not only the trade fluxes more fair, but this is what makes also the decision from every part more easy. People will make decisions based on what they can really measure. And I believe that we've been doing a lot, but there is still a lot to be done in that sense. It's not only about, we've been doing our inventories, the companies, they have their own metrics, they have their own targets, but we do need to harmonize this, not only internally, globally. So my wish is that we are able to advance in this transparency, in traceability, so that the customers, the community where we operate, they understand who are their partners, what they are doing, how they are fulfilling those commitments, and they are how they together can be agents of transformation.
Great, thanks. Edu, what does good look like?
Well, in 29, I think we're all going to be saying next year's 2030 because that's the round number, right? Next one. But I think there's going, like Janaina is saying, there's one thing is trust. And I'm talking about the metal sector, but the mine more specifically, mining does not have trust from society. That's a, but I think the whole sector is saying, okay, but we need the trust, right? Because we have critical metals that or minerals that we have to look for. There's a low carbon world out there, but society is saying, okay, wait, you have to do this in a certain way. This is what's happening here. It's a very good picture of it. So we are going to have to figure out how we do it. And trust is not only about transparency or telling the truth. And then there's this anecdote that I heard the other day that there's this very famous politician, I'm not going to say names, that was on a TV, and he was lying through his teeth at this interview. But while he was lying, the trust level was actually raising because it was measuring this. Because it's not about him lying or not, it's about the reliability. People knew he was going to lie. So he didn't break the trust, because that is already clear, right? But we are a value-based company. We have compliance. We have a lot of regulations in it. So we have to comply with that, but we also have to show society that we are doing that so that we can earn this trust. So this is not, overnight thing. So we see that in our mind, where it's one of the biggest footprints. It's the biggest footprint that we have in terms of social and nature. We see the trust already happening, that this is because of the resilience. And I think part of this is, okay, these guys are here day after day, year after year, and they're actually listening to what we're telling them. So that's the breakthrough for us. But it is a long run, and we're not going to have everybody at the same pace. And that goes to how does the market look at the value on this. So, yep.
Trust. Yeah, it's an important one. So we have 3 minutes left. Maybe very quickly to round us out, each of you, what comes top of mind if you had that magic wand and that one wish that would kind of change everything? What is that one wish that makes a huge difference in the topic that we discussed?
I think it's the same for decarbonization as when we talk about social impact. We need somehow some leveling playing field.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something also about engaging with the politicians to make sure that the standards, the regulations is also expecting something from companies, because otherwise we could invest a lot in all the things we do, and we could struggle to get a green premium. But I think it's really about also getting this out in the market in an equal way.
Okay, level playing field. Yeah.
I risk repeating because I believe that I've been saying this in many panels, and I have stressed it enough. Yes, traceability is the element that will bring some sort of this is what will differentiate who is doing right, who is not, and what needs to be done next. And you can recognize, and also you can demand traceability is what not only about level playing, is also about accountability. So I agree with what has been said here.
Close us out, bring us home.
I would just add the culture change that comes from that. It's like safety. A while ago, we were talking about this over dinner the other day, how the world and how industry has changed on safety, right? And it's safety, priority number 1, 2, 3, 4, as John Tusted says.
Or you go to say good morning, you say...
Exactly. And then, so there's a cultural change, right? You look at your job and the world differently. And I think on traceability is the same thing. We need to change the mindset to embed it in the system.
Great points. Great points. Level playing field, traceability, mindset change. Thank you very much. This was a fascinating conversation. And let's keep working. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.